Growing up, I was a Disney girl. I have seen most of the movies and just like every girl, gotten wrapped up in the fairy tales. This is honestly a topic I could write a book on, but since I only got a short amount of time to talk about it and write about it, I covered the protagonists in the paper portion, and I chose to write about their evil counterparts in the slideshow. Just as there are common themes to the protagonist women, there are common themes to the antagonist women as well, and they do not always teach positive and tolerant lessons. The Evil Queen was first introduced through Disney in 1937, and although the oldest of Disney villainesses, she is one of the most memorable for being frightening and cruel. Just as I spoke in my paper, there are eras to Disney women, and the Evil Queen is definitely part of the first era, the era of underdeveloped, one-sided female roles. Just as Snow White is completely and wholly good, the Evil Queen is completely and wholly, well, evil. The first thing that draws my attention when I talk about the Evil Queen is that she is nameless and referred to in derogatory terms. Usually when a name is taken away, you are trying to lessen that person's humanity. Being nameless takes some sort of human quality away from her. Although she is beautiful in the movie, she is also dressed in cold colors and heavily made up. Her lips are pursed, her eyebrows are sharp, and her glares are sharper. Not only that, but her appearances change in the movie to a haggard old woman alone in the woods. This is the picture of the stereotypical witch from the times of the witch trials, and what Disney paints as the picture of ultimate evil, teaching people that looks can equate to personality. Beautiful people are good people, and ugly people are bad people. The underdevelopment and one-sidedness of the female villain continues for most of the movies, only getting better very recently, and that change is distinctly noticeable. They are everything that their protagonist counterparts can never be. Just like the Evil Queen, the evil stepmother and stepsisters in Cinderella are one-sided and underdeveloped, but for some reason still seem far more interesting to me in adulthood than Cinderella herself. Although they are evil and not given much of a reason for being this way, they do have underlying emotions that are valid. The ambitions of the stepmother for her daughters is something that any mother would feel. Mothers are supposed to want the best for their children. Not that it excuses her behavior, but I think it leads to a valid reason for the emotions she feels. Her actions might be evil, but her motives certainly aren't. The Queen of Hearts in Alice in Wonderland is just as backwards as any of the other inhabitants of Wonderland. She is made to look distinctly ape-like with a long and round face. This, paired with her wicked and hot-tempered personality, takes away from her humanity. You never see another side of the Queen of Hearts other than her immense temper going around beheading people with the slightest offense. The overly aggressive queen is a clear representation and message saying women in power are dangerous. The first version of Maleficent is just as single-sided as the villainesses before her. The first adaptation of this character, after doing research on the original fairy tale, is a complete and utter betrayal to her and a slap in the face to women, which Disney decided to correct later in 2014. They show no background for Maleficent and make her seem as if she is vengeful for only slight offenses. It makes her seem crazy, irrational, and entirely evil. It is saying that her emotions and reasons for being the way she is are invalid. It gives the impression to other women that negative emotions after betrayals are inherently evil. Even when wronged by men, you should not feel negatively towards them. Cruella de Vil might be one of the most cruel, but also one of the most underappreciated of all the villainesses. If you can get past the fact that she wants to kill puppies, you can see that she is completely liberated and free-spirited as a woman. She has no cares about what others think, and she does what she pleases. She has some very radical notions for her time. She loves cars, has no children, takes charge, dresses provocatively, thinks selfishly, has ambitions, etc. And obviously, a free-spirited, liberated woman must be evil. Ursula is interesting because you get a hint of background story, but you don't really get to see what happened to make her bent on revenge. She seems like a very complex character in The Little Mermaid, but you don't really get both sides. You still only get one. One theme common to almost all of the villainesses, Ursula included, is that they usually have male henchmen. They can take human form or animal form, but they are distinctly male. This sends the message that any woman powerful enough to have power over men must be evil. Mother Gothel is depicted much as our first evil woman, the Evil Queen. She is shown as both a beautiful and dark beauty and as an old and haggard witch. There aren't many redeeming qualities to Mother Gothel. She is greedy, jealous, and manipulative. Just as having henchmen under your control, another common theme for almost all evil women in Disney is their ability to manipulate. Mother Gothel might be the prime example of this. She manipulates Rapunzel her entire life. She manipulates men to do her dirty work, getting Rapunzel back, etc. It is also worth mentioning that she uses her sexuality to get what she wants, as some of her former villainesses did as well. The underlying thought here seems to be a discourager of sex or provocative behavior from women. Even though in the same movie Flynn Rider tries to use his sexuality to his advantage and is seen in a light-hearted way. Provocative behavior for men is comical and endearing, but when women do it, it must be evil-natured. In the spin-off of Sleeping Beauty, Maleficent, you get a bit more of a backstory to the villainess that seemed so cruel originally. This seems to be the first time that any of the villainesses have a duality to them, and it gives them a much more human quality. She has become a complex and messy character. She is both dark and light. She is just like real people now. She is also shown in a much more beautiful light physically. Originally, she was depicted as somewhat sharp and ugly. But in this adaptation, she is depicted in a way that shows her to have untraditional qualities that are still beautiful. Although this story doesn't follow the original fairy tale for Maleficent, it is a much closer adaptation. It begins to validate maybe not her actions, but at least her emotions as a scorned and broken woman who was raped and stolen from in the original fairy tale. Probably the most forward-thinking of the villainesses, just like her counterpart Moana, is Te Kā. Te Kā isn't really a villain at all, just a scorned goddess who is trying to protect herself and is ultimately misunderstood. This type of light and dark in the same character, just like Maleficent showed, validates both the light and dark side of women. You don't have to be just one, and it is okay to be both. You don't have to hide the negative emotions. You are not evil for having bad feelings. What was stolen from Te Fiti was her ability to create life, which turned her into Te Kā. This coincides with something the philosopher Julia Kristeva talks about as part of third-wave feminism. She believes that there are two types of egos, both a masculine and a feminine. And one of the most important and distinct differences is that the female has the power to create life and the male does not. It is a completely different experience entirely. This means when Te Fiti's ability to create life was stolen, essentially her womanhood was stolen from her. And once it was restored, Te Fiti was again the goddess of life instead of the villainess of destruction. What is important to take away from all of this is that just because Disney, which is a reflection of society, tells us we should do one thing, doesn't mean it is correct and all the other ways are wrong. You are not evil if you do not conform. You are not necessarily good if you do. You should not be judged on looks or feared for your outspoken and powerful behavior. You should not be feared if you are liberated and free-spirited, and you should be allowed to feel all of the stereotypical negative emotions because they are real and valid as well.
You're done.